Welcome to the Here's My Story channel. My name is Eilish. My life is a nightmare because of my stepmom. She's a clean freak. The medical term for her condition is OCD. That is obsessive compulsive disorder. People with OCD become wildly obsessed with something. Some of them become fixated on cleaning their bodies. They wash their hands 1,000 times a day. They shower 100 times. Some people with OCD clean their houses in a compulsive manner. That, unfortunately, is exactly what my stepmom is obsessed with. She wants the house she lives in to be beyond clean. Because of my stepmom's condition, I have routine chores when I get back home from school. They're all about cleaning. Every day, I mop the floors. Then I wipe down the walls. For each room, I use different scented cleaning solutions. When my stepmom comes home from work, she checks every spot I cleaned one by one. She sniffs around to see if I used the correct cleaning solution. If she sees a tiny speck of dirt, she wants me to clean the whole house again. So I get really stressed during these routine checks. If she can't see any issues, she says, "Even though you are no good, you did everything just like I wanted you to. But this is not all you. You can only do this because I trained you so well. Otherwise, you could never pull it off on your own." My dad married this woman 3 years ago. I was living with my grandma at the time. When my grandma passed, I had no choice but to move in with my dad. One day, my dad said to me, "I can't take care of you on my own. I have to get married for your sake. You need a mother." I disagreed. "I'm not a kid anymore. I can take care of myself," I said to him. But he didn't listen to me. He abruptly went and married his colleague, Anna. My mom died while giving birth to me. She had epilepsy, so her body had never been particularly strong. Doctors told her that pregnancy might be especially dangerous, but my mom didn't listen to them. She passed away during labor without even meeting me. All I have left from my mom is this photo. Thanks to this, I know what my mom's face looked like, and I can see her in my dreams. I often visit her grave, too. I talk to her. If there's an important decision I need to make, I always ask her about it. Then she comes into my dream and tells me what she thinks. This may sound weird to you, but I really believe my mom communicates with me through dreams. My dad and stepmom work at a frozen pizza factory. My dad is in the purchasing department while my stepmom is the accounting manager. I heard them fighting one night. My dad was talking about going to jail. Their door was ajar. I tried to peek in and understand what was going on. My dad was yelling, "I did this because you wanted me to. Why do you want me to take the blame now? You are as responsible for this as I am." Shedding crocodile tears, my stepmom replied, "Why should we both go to jail? Who's going to take care of our daughter? You need to take the blame yourself for Eilish's sake." My dad looked down in silence. At that moment, I knew that he had accepted this to keep me safe. 1 week later, I found out about all the details. My stepmom had committed invoice fraud, so the records showed purchased goods that my dad in fact had not purchased for the factory. My stepmom then transferred payments for those goods into her own bank accounts. This is how they misappropriated the company's funds. But somehow, someone figured it out. Detectives began to look into the company records. When my stepmom figured out that they were going to get caught, she convinced my dad to take the blame. In his court deposition, my dad said, "My wife doesn't know anything. I tricked her. I'm the only one who's guilty here." The court gave my dad 6 years in prison for embezzlement. I was incredibly angry at my stepmom, but I couldn't do anything. I had no relatives I could go to. On paper, I did have a mother, but only because Anna was married to my dad. I couldn't seek shelter at a children's home. I had no choice but to live with her. My stepmom was now home all day. Previously, I would clean before she came home from work, but now she was constantly saying, "Don't go to school, clean the house. Everything's so dirty, I feel like I'm going to choke." After a while, I had to leave school for good. Now I was getting up in the morning and cleaning until midnight. Normally, I dream of my mom at least 1 day a week, but during that time, she visited me every night in my dreams. She wouldn't talk to me, she just gestured for me to come to her. Obviously, she wanted me to visit her grave, but it was impossible for me to leave the house. My stepmom kept showing me spots to clean around the house. If I was gone for 5 minutes, she would start yelling and screaming. One morning, I mustered up the courage to say, "I want to visit my mom. I'll be back in a couple of hours." My stepmom burst out laughing. "No offense, but I think your mom's bones must have completely decomposed by now. Why do you want to see her grave? That's not your mom. It's just a stone with your mom's name on it," she replied. I was really upset. I began to cry. My stepmom showed me the door saying, "Go cry outside. You're ruining the house with your dirty teardrops." I ran outside. I had completely lost control. I kept running and sobbing at the same time. Normally, I go to the cemetery by bus. That day, I ran for nearly 2 hours without stopping. Finally, I reached the cemetery. I hugged my mom's gravestone. "No, you're not just a stone. You're my dear mom," I mumbled between sobs. At that second, I heard a sound like a whistle. It was coming from up above. When I looked up, I saw a red object zooming down towards the ground. It came closer and closer until it landed about 30 feet from me and sank into the ground. A hole had formed at that spot, and smoke was coming out of it. As I walked closer, I realized that it was the heat that made the object seem red to me. As it cooled down, it turned into a green rock. It wasn't very big, almost the size of a small turtle. I was staring at the rock, trying to figure out what it was. The only explanation I could come up with was that this was a meteorite. It was a fireball that came from outer space. I always thought they looked just like regular rocks, but this one was bright green. I was too curious not to touch it, even though I knew that was a dangerous thing to do. It was still hot, but not hot enough to burn my hand. It was perfectly smooth. Perhaps it had spent years traveling around space before entering the Earth's orbit and finally landing right next to me. A small piece had separated from the rock due to impact. I held it up into the sunlight. It looked like a diamond, but I didn't think there were any diamonds in space. Plus, diamonds are clear. This rock, on the other hand, was green. I went back to my mom's grave. "Even though you're far away, you always take care of me. I don't know what to do with this meteorite, but I'm sure this was the reason why you called me here," I said. Then I dug a hole in my mom's grave and buried the rock in it. The small piece from the meteorite was in my pocket. I had to go and find out what it was. I could look it up online, but I'd left my phone at home. How was I going to go and get it back when my stepmom was at home? I had an idea. I picked up some dirt from my mom's grave and filled my pockets. When I came home, my stepmom leapt to her feet. Her eyes flashed with anger. "You went to see your mom's bones, didn't you? Didn't I tell you not to go?" she screamed. Without saying anything, I took out some dirt from my pocket and sprinkled it on the floor. She looked around bewildered. "What are you doing? Stop ruining my house!" she yelled. I ran into the kitchen. I threw a handful of soil up in the air. I did the same in all the other rooms and finished all the soil that I took from my mom's grave. As I was going to my room, my stepmom had already begun mopping the floors, crying, "My house is ruined. It's filthy." Because of her condition, she felt compelled to deep clean the house. I picked up my phone. I packed a few of my things in a small suitcase. I walked past my stepmom as I was leaving. She was deliriously trying to clean the floors. "Eilish, come here! Clean up your mess! Help me!" she cried, but I obviously did not stop. I slammed the door behind me and left. I sat down on a park bench and started doing some research online. Nothing came up when I searched for green meteorite, so I searched for green gemstone. When I clicked on the images, I saw that they definitely looked like my meteorite. Finally, I figured out that mine was a gemstone called jadeite. It was the second most expensive gemstone in the world. Blue diamond was at the top of the list. A 1-carat blue diamond was worth $4 million. Jadeite had the second spot, and it was worth $3 million. Then I looked up the definition of a carat. 10 carats were equal to 2 grams. If the small piece of rock that I was carrying with me weighed 20 grams, then that meant I was carrying $300 million in my pocket right now. My heart skipped a beat. I mumbled to myself, "Since the meteorite in my mom's grave is much bigger, I'm a billionaire." Using another stone, I divided the rock in my pocket into even smaller parts. No jeweler would buy a precious stone worth $300 million from a teenager. It wasn't that difficult to sell one of the smaller pieces. When the jeweler examined the stone, he said, "I've never seen such a flawless jadeite in my life," before handing me my money. Apparently, jadeite is so expensive because it is very rare. But in space, asteroids that are made of diamonds or precious stones like this exist. There are even space mining companies that take advantage of these. Even if it's a super rare event, asteroid pieces like mine do fall onto Earth. I had a $1 billion meteorite fall next to me, and the only reason I happened to be there at that moment was my dear mom. I had become a billionaire. When you have so much money, you can do anything you like. I bought myself a huge mansion. I had a safe installed in my bedroom. I put the meteorite, my mom's biggest gift to me, inside that safe. Now I simply cut off a piece of it whenever I need money. With one of those pieces, I bought the frozen pizza factory that my dad and my mom used to work at. As the owner of the factory, I withdrew all the allegations towards my dad. I hired a great team of lawyers and pretty soon got my dad out of prison. My dad and I live together now. I haven't seen my stepmom since. My dad went to her house to get the divorce papers signed. He said nothing had changed in regard to her condition, but now she had to do all the cleaning herself since I wasn't around anymore. She said some horrible things about me at first. When she found out that I was a billionaire, her attitude suddenly shifted. I will get help. Bring our beautiful daughter home. Let's be a happy family again, she begged. My dad would have none of it. You ruined my life. Thankfully, my daughter saved me from prison. And now I'm saving myself from you, he said. By the way, I think I forgot to tell you. The house I bought is very close to my mom. I visit her every morning. I take my time talking to her. She comes to me at nighttime in my dreams to answer my questions. She's my guardian angel. I love her more than anything. One morning, I woke up to my mom yelling, Madison, get over here and help us. The cab's waiting outside. How do you think we're going to carry all these suitcases on our own? My mom was doing this to annoy me. She was taking my sister on vacation, and she wanted me to see them leave so I could suffer. My sister Charlotte grinned smugly when she saw me. I hope you're not jealous. You could have been coming with us if you were doing as good as I am in school. Without meeting her gaze, I said, I'm doing well enough at school. My mom jumped in. You're not good at math. Math proves how smart you are. Unfortunately, you take after your father there. But my Charlotte is just like her mother in every way. Charlotte turned to my mom, giggling, and I'm so proud of it, Mommy. My parents got divorced 5 years ago. It was my dad who wanted to break up. That's why my mom is still mad at him. She belittles my dad every chance she gets. I look so much like my dad, and that must be why she doesn't like me as much as she likes my sister. She turned to me as she was getting into the cab. You have 1 week. Study as much as you can. I'll give you a little quiz when I get back. If I see that you haven't improved, you can forget about vacation. Every time Charlotte and I go away, you'll be staying back at home like this. You see, everyone gets the life they deserve. When I went back into the house, I could no longer hold back my tears. I started crying. Actually, I didn't care if I was going with them or not. What really upset me was the injustice of it all. Yes, I'm bad at math. I don't get math no matter how hard I try. But I can't stand my mom treating me like I have a lower IQ just because I'm bad at math. The next morning, I woke up early. I found the best math sites on the internet and I started studying. Unfortunately, nothing changed. I thought I understood all the subjects, but afterward, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't solve the problems. Perhaps it would help if I got some tips from a friend who is good at math. I went to see Hannah, who's one of my besties. I told her everything. You're so good at math. Do you have any suggestions for me? I'm scared I'll start believing I'm an idiot soon, I said. Hannah consoled me. This has nothing to do with intelligence. Some people are naturally inclined towards math, while some excel in verbal skills. From what I understand, though, you really are in a pickle. I can suggest something else, but I'm scared that you'll make fun of me. Why would I make fun of you? As you said, I'm in a pickle. I'm open to any suggestions, I said, encouraging her to go on. Hannah said, do you remember the time my brother had disappeared 2 years ago? We were all so worried. A friend of my mom's took us to a lady. Don't laugh, but the lady? She was a witch. What? A witch? Like in the movies? I responded. Yes, she came from a lineage of French witches. She learned how to cast a spell from notes left to her from her great-grandmother. On a piece of paper, she wrote "come back" spell and gave it to my mom. My mom read the things on the piece of paper for 3 nights before going to bed. Blood to blood, I summon thee. Blood to blood, return to me. And my brother came home after those 3 days. Oh my gosh, that's really unbelievable, Hannah. Please take me to that lady, please. I will never forget this favor, I said, practically begging her. Hannah accepted. I was elated. I had a wonderful surprise for my mom, Charlotte, in mind. After a long bus ride, we arrived at the neighborhood outside of the city. I was surprised when we got to the witch's house because it looked quite normal. Hannah had called the lady in advance to let her know we were on our way. When we walked in, I was disappointed again because the witch looked very normal. She'd offered us tea and biscuits. We had a nice chat. "Madison, you're so sweet. I'll be very happy if I can help you. I have a great spell for you," she said. "Really? Will it make me smarter?" I asked her excitedly. "I think you're smart enough. It's normal to have difficulties with math. One cannot excel in every subject. I'll help you with your learning, not with your IQ," she said, and with a big smile on her face added, "Let's go into my study. It's time for some magic." I was astonished when we entered her study. This was definitely a witch's room. Candles were the only source of light here. There were so many old books on the shelves, so many jars everywhere. I picked up a jar filled with green liquid. The tag on it said mouse milk. I shivered. I put it back immediately. The lady seemed different in this room too. She had turned into a full-blown witch. Even the tone of her voice changed. She handed me an envelope. In a raspy voice, she said, "There is a piece of paper in this envelope. Don't read it now. The name of this spell is knowledge absorption. Get in front of the mirror at dawn and say the magic words. You will learn everything easily with the help of this spell, but you'll forget it all at dusk." I took the envelope and thanked her. Hannah looked just as worried as I was. With quick steps, we left the room. When I woke up the next morning, I was so excited. To be honest, I was a little scared as well. I stood before the mirror just like the witch had told me to do. I took a deep breath. There was a yellow note inside the envelope. I took it out. Right as the sun was coming up, I began reading the spell from the note. "In this place and in this hour, I call upon the ancient power. From dusk till dawn, I will understand everything from the sky to the ground." I had imagined a ray of light was going to wash over me and maybe even a voice along with it, but nothing happened. Was the witch lady a charlatan? Did you go all that way for nothing? The spell didn't seem to work, but I wanted to try it anyway. I took the math book that was sitting on my desk. Right at that second, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, I felt an irresistible urge within myself. The pages of the book started moving without me touching. Letters and math formulas appeared on the walls. They hovered up in the air for a while and then flew into my brain. Then everything went back to normal. I looked at the questions to see if I could solve them. In that instant, I realized that I had learned every single thing in that math book. I was able to solve the questions at lightning speed without a pen or paper. I was hyperventilating with excitement. I lay down on the floor. The spell had worked. It sounded incredible, but I was a math genius thanks to the spell the witch had given to me. My mom and Charlotte would be so surprised. I began laughing out loud. The day my mom and sister came back, I woke up early. I did the spell in front of the mirror. They would be home in 5 hours. Besides my math prowess, I was going to prepare a few more surprises for them until then. Charlotte had gotten excited about music and bought herself a guitar last year, but she couldn't figure out how to play it right, even though she tried hard. I took the guitar from her room. I found a guitar tutorial on YouTube. In 10 minutes, I was a total guitar virtuoso. Of course, I owed it all to the spell, but I was playing so well that for a second, I wondered if I really did have natural talent for it. My mom and Charlotte went to Mexico for vacation. I'm sure they had a pretty hard time because they don't speak a word of Spanish. I started hanging out at Spanish learning sites. Half an hour later, I was speaking Spanish as if it were my mother tongue. When my mom and sister arrived, I greeted them at the door. I helped them with their suitcases. Apparently, they thought I'd be upset with them. They were surprised to see me in such a happy mood. Charlotte cut to the chase to kill my buzz. "Did you study math, dear sister? I'm sure you gave up at some point because you just don't get it. Mom said she was going to give you a quiz. You're going to fail, and we all know it. So you don't need to stress out about it," she said. I smiled calmly. I actually had a very productive week. I realized math isn't that hard after all. I just have to stay focused while studying, that's all, I replied. My mom and Charlotte looked at each other and laughed in my face. My mom said, "You studied math and understood? That doesn't sound credible to me." "Then it's time for your little quiz. Let's see how I'm gonna do," I replied. My mom and Charlotte took the math book and started preparing the quiz questions for me. They came to my room and gave me the questions. Then they stood by watching me. They were both grinning since they were sure I was going to fail. There were 5 questions. I barely glanced at them and then gave them all the answers. My mom opened her eyes wide. "We just prepared those questions. You didn't know what we were going to ask, but they're all correct. This is impossible," she said. Charlotte was as shocked as Mom. "I'm sure she cheated. No way she could have done it so fast. She didn't even write anything down," she yelled. "I saw that when you focus, math is not difficult at all. I actually had some free time to develop a few other skills than math, I said. Then I asked them in Spanish how their vacation went. Naturally, they didn't understand. Charlotte said in disbelief, You speak Spanish? Apparently, they needed someone who spoke Spanish in Mexico. Yes, I answered, and continued to speak to them in Spanish. They were both staring at me, mouths agape. Spanish is a really easy language to learn. It didn't take much of my time. There's actually one more thing I want to show you other than math and Spanish. I wonder if you're going to like this more, I said, and took my sister Charlotte's guitar. I said to my sister, Why were you not able to learn how to play the guitar? It's like child's play, and began strumming. I was playing it so well that I was surprised at how powerful the knowledge absorption spell was. My mom and Charlotte had the biggest surprise of their lives that day. Looking into her eyes, I could tell how jealous my mom was of me. It was expected. I was better at math now than her beloved daughter would ever be. I excelled at playing a musical instrument Charlotte couldn't play. And I could speak Spanish as fluently as a native speaker. I learned all of this in 1 week. From then on, they have always been jealous of me because I keep surprising them with a new skill every day. Last month, I became a chess champion at the high school league. The mobile game I developed after learning coding became really popular. One day, I cooked Russian cuisine. The next day, Turkish. I have another skill that I don't show them. After casting the spell in the morning, I spent some time learning about the stock market. I got into it by buying a few stocks with my allowance. The money in my investment account hit $250,000 in no time. When it hits $1 million, I'm going to buy a beautiful house in a beach town in Mexico. Then I'll invite my mom and Charlotte to my summer house and give them another huge surprise. I'm really curious to see their faces when I do that. A few months ago, I got home from school and turned on my computer right away. I had a presentation for my English class due the next day. The subject was, what was happening in the world the month I was born? So I had to research all the important events that took place in March of 2005. I Googled 2005 March news. On a news site, I found stories listed by publish date. I started going through all the headlines starting from March 1st and noting down the ones I thought were important. I'd been working nonstop for hours. Finally, I got to my birth date, March 18th, 2005. What happened the day I was born? I began browsing through the news stories. A big auto show had opened. There was an earthquake in Alaska. A celebrity couple announced they were getting divorced. What a boring day to be born on, I thought, and started looking through the next day's stories. One headline caught my attention. Search continues for baby abducted from hospital. I clicked on the story. As I read it, I started to feel like I was suffocating. The police have been conducting a massive search party trying to locate the Roberts baby girl, Hannah. They are searching every home in town to find the baby who was kidnapped by a person pretending to be a nurse. The mother, Ann Taylor Roberts, said, I feel like I'm in a nightmare. I can't believe something this awful has happened to me. I was shocked. Our last name is Roberts. My mom's name is Taylor, and I'm Hannah. I had been kidnapped from the hospital the day I was born, and my family had kept it a secret from me. I kept reading and found out there were more details to the story. My mom was in her room at the hospital, semi-conscious because she had had a C-section. A nurse came in. I need to take the baby so the doctor can give her a physical examination. I'll bring her back in 30 minutes, she said. After a while, another nurse walked into the room. Where's the baby? She asked. When my mom said, the doctor wanted her for a physical, they knew I was kidnapped because physical exams for newborns did not exist. The security camera footage showed how the fake nurse had kidnapped me. First, she changed her clothes in the restroom. Then she left the hospital with me, pretending that I was her baby. Okay, so I was kidnapped, but since I'm with my family now, they must have found me. I Googled Hannah Roberts kidnapped baby and began reading the stories from the following days. At the time, there was a new chief of police in our town. He made a promise to my mom. I'm giving you my word, I will find your daughter, he said. He put together a huge search party. They left no stone unturned, but still couldn't find me. 6 months passed. An abandoned stroller was found in a shopping mall 30 miles away. There was a 6-month-old baby girl inside. The police chief brought the baby to my family so that they could identify me. My mom was so happy at first. But then she became disappointed. I only got to spend a few hours with my baby, so I can't be sure. But something tells me it's not her, she said, and started sobbing. My dad also said, this baby looks nothing like me or my wife. She can't be our daughter. The police chief said, there are no other missing babies. Let's get a DNA test. That's the only way we can be sure. They took saliva samples from my parents and the baby and sent them to a lab. When the results of the DNA test came back, everything became clear. I was definitely my parents' baby. The police chief held a press conference. He said to my mom, "I told you I would find your baby, and I kept my promise." I had learned something incredible about myself, but I had no clue that this was only the beginning. There was another secret, which was even bigger than this one. I only discovered it a few months later, and it changed my life forever. When I read about the kidnapping, my parents weren't home from work yet. I was dying to talk to them about the whole thing. Why did they hide it from me? Maybe they were ashamed because at first they thought I wasn't their baby. On the other hand, they're not wrong. I look nothing like them. My sister Ellie looks exactly like my mom. They both have big eyes and tiny noses. In other ways, she's just like my dad. She laughs silently like him, and they both turn completely red when they're angry. I, on the other hand, look like I'm adopted. I have nothing in common with my parents. When they came home from work, I told them I had something important to talk to them about. After dinner, they sent my sister to a room. They were looking at me curiously. I told them everything from the beginning. They were clearly both very upset. "Why did you hide this from me?" I asked. Mom said, "Honey, for us, this is a bad memory, and we want to forget that it ever happened. We moved to a new place so people around us wouldn't remind us of the whole thing." Dad said, "Sweetheart, this was a much bigger trauma for us than you can ever imagine. But God answered our prayers and we got you back. We don't need to talk about this anymore." I could understand what they were saying, but I still had so many questions. "Why did that woman who kidnapped me leave me in that shopping mall?" I asked. My mom said, "Hannah, you already found out all you need to know from the news. Whenever I go back to those days, my heart hurts and I can't breathe. Honey, I beg you, please let's not talk about this anymore." When she put it that way, I couldn't keep asking her. I kept thinking about this for the next few days. I read everything there was to read about this story online. When I figured out there was nothing else for me to dig into, I gradually stopped thinking about it. One day, as I was waiting for the bus after school, I got a text from my mom which said, "Hannah, your sister had an accident. She's about to go into surgery." I was stunned. The hospital wasn't far away. I started crying and running in a panic. When I got to the hospital, I gave a nurse my sister's name and asked where she was. The nurse said, "Your sister just went into surgery. She was hit by a car as she was crossing the street. She lost a lot of blood before the ambulance arrived. Your parents gave blood, but we might need more. Let's get some from you as well." I said, "Sure," and went to a room where they could draw my blood. Something incredible happened there. The nurse said, "Honey, we can't draw your blood because your blood type is different from your sister's. Hers is type O positive. Your parents too, but yours is AB negative. When the parents are type O positive, the kids are also type O positive. Are you adopted?" I was shocked, but I couldn't say anything to the nurse at that moment. I just said, "Yes." The nurse laughed. "It's my fault. I dragged you here because you said my sister. I didn't think you could be adopted. You make mistakes like that when you work long hours," she said. I left her and ran to my parents. They looked terrible. I didn't tell them what the nurse had told me. I just hugged them. We waited for my sister to come out of surgery. Her surgery went really well. The doctor said Ellie should recover fully in 2 weeks. We were so happy. I was so upset over what happened to her that I couldn't fully process what I'd found out about myself. It was obvious that I wasn't my parents' child. My parents had been right. The baby that was found wasn't theirs after all. So who was I? Who had abandoned me at the shopping mall? Were the DNA test results fake? And where was my parents' real daughter? This hurt the most. My parents had lost their own child and raised another one thinking that she was theirs. I thought about this for days. Finally, I made a decision. It was my parents' right to know the truth. If I didn't tell them I wasn't their real child, I'd be lying. I loved them both so much. They didn't deserve to be lied to. After telling them I wasn't their daughter, I'd moved to a group home. Since I wasn't their daughter, that was where I belonged. The following day, I woke up early. I opened my closet. It was packed with clothes, but none of them were mine. These belonged to my parents' abducted child. I had stolen her life. I took only 2 t-shirts and a pair of jeans and packed them into a suitcase. My mom opened the door and peeked in. "Good morning, love. Come, breakfast is ready," she said. She was surprised to see the suitcase. She asked, laughing, "Are you going somewhere?" I couldn't keep everything inside any longer. Tears started coming down my face. I sobbed for a while. My dad heard me cry too. He came into my room. "I want to talk to you about something important," I said. I told them about what happened at the hospital and everything else that was on my mind. "I'm not your real daughter. A group home is where I belong. I love you so much, but I have to leave this house," I said, grabbing my suitcase. I was ready to leave now. My parents looked at each other. Then they came closer to me and gave me a big hug. My dad said, "You're not going anywhere. You are our daughter. We have known all of this for years." I was surprised. "You knew? How did you find out? Was that DNA report fake?" I asked. My mom nodded. "Yes, it was fake. The police chief faked it, but I'm not mad at him for it. Yes, we lost our daughter, but thanks to that report, we got another one," she said, and began telling the rest of the story. "After the kidnapping, the police chief brought you to us. Just like you read in the news, your dad and I both thought the baby they found, meaning you, wasn't ours. The DNA test convinced us that you were, but as time passed by, we figured out we had been right. You didn't look or act like us. We didn't have any common traits. We had to know the truth. Your dad went to talk to the police chief. He had retired after being diagnosed with cancer. The doctors were saying he didn't have a lot of time left. Perhaps that's why he came clean. He told us, 'I had just become the chief. I wanted to prove that I was the right man for the job. I promised I'd find your baby in front of the press, but I couldn't keep my promise. That's why I made it look like the baby found in the shopping mall was yours. I pressured the lab into preparing a fake DNA report. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.' We were relieved to learn the truth. Obviously, we didn't start loving you any less because it wasn't your fault. You were a victim just like us. You are our precious daughter. This house is your house. We are your family. The DNA report might be fake, but our love for you is real." We all hugged. I realized I was very lucky. I loved my parents even more than before. My mom wasn't my biological mom. I hadn't grown inside her belly, but she loved me as if I had, and this made her even more special.